Commander Vex Thorn stood on the bridge of the warship Eternal Conquest and looked down at the blue planet below, Earth. The humans called it home. Soon it would belong to the Corvani Empire. He had waited 3 years for this moment, studied every intelligence report, and prepared every detail of the invasion plan. Now the time had come. "Begin the invasion," he said. The order went out to 500 ships. Thousands of soldiers prepared to drop from the sky. The Corvani had conquered 47 worlds before this one. Earth would be number 48. It was supposed to be easy. Every analysis said so. Every model predicted a swift victory. The humans had no space fleet. They had no energy shields. Their weapons were primitive things that threw small pieces of metal. The Corvani had plasma rifles and battle armor that could stop bullets. They had orbital bombardment capabilities that could reduce cities to ash. On paper, this war was already won before it started. Vex Thorn watched the first landing pods fall toward the planet's surface. In 3 days, he thought, the human governments would surrender. In 2 weeks, the planet would be under full Corvani control. In 3 months, humans would be working in the mines and factories like all the other conquered species. The Empire would add another world to its dominion, and Vex Thorn would receive a promotion for his efficient management of the campaign. He was wrong about all of it. Soldier third-class Kieraven landed in a field somewhere in what the humans called France. Her squad of 12 emerged from the pod with weapons raised, moving in the precise formation they had practiced 10,000 times. They expected resistance. They expected fear. They expected the usual reactions of conquered people facing their new masters. They found a farmer standing by his tractor, staring at them with wide eyes. The squad leader, Sergeant Marek, raised his rifle. "This land now belongs to the Corvani Empire. You will come with us for processing." The farmer did not run. He did not scream. He did not fall to his knees and beg for mercy like conquered people usually did. He looked at the 12 armed aliens in their black armor and said something in his strange language. The words sounded annoyed rather than frightened. Then he went back to his tractor and kept working, as if alien invaders were just another inconvenience in his day. "What is he doing?" Kieraven asked. "Ignoring us," Marek said. He sounded confused. Marek had served in 7 invasions before this one. In 47 conquests, no one had ever simply ignored them. They took the farmer prisoner anyway. He came without fighting, though he complained a lot in words they did not understand. Their translators were still learning human languages. It would take a few days before they could speak to the natives properly. The farmer seemed more irritated about missing his work than scared about his capture. That first day, Kieraven's squad captured 23 humans. None of them fought back. Most of them seemed more annoyed than afraid. One old woman offered them food, pushing a basket of bread toward them with an encouraging smile. Another man tried to sell them something from the back of a vehicle, showing them colorful objects and making gestures that clearly meant he wanted something in exchange. This was not how conquest was supposed to go. Kieraven had been trained for violence, for terror, for desperate last stands by doomed defenders. She had not been trained for indifference and hospitality. The real fighting came later. Human military forces responded within hours. Jets screamed through the sky, faster than any aircraft the Corvani had seen on other conquered worlds. Tanks rolled across fields. Soldiers in green and brown clothing attacked Corvani positions with their primitive weapons. They communicated through devices in their ears, coordinating attacks with impressive precision. The Corvani weapons were better. Their armor was stronger. Their training was superior. They won most of the early battles, but something strange happened with each victory, something that unsettled the Corvani commanders and confused the soldiers on the ground. The human soldiers kept fighting even when they should have surrendered. They used their bodies to block doorways to give civilians time to escape. They threw themselves on Corvani soldiers even when it meant death. They protected their wounded instead of leaving them behind like any sensible army would. In the Corvani Empire, soldiers were tools. When a battle was lost, you surrendered and accepted your new role as a slave. Fighting to the death for a lost cause was considered stupid, a waste of resources. Resources should not be spent on hopeless situations. The Empire had taught this lesson for 3,000 years. But the humans did not think this way. Kieraven saw a human soldier throw himself on a grenade to save 3 others. The explosion killed him instantly, tearing his body apart. His companions survived and kept fighting. One of them was crying as he fired his weapon, tears running down his face, but he did not stop. He did not surrender. She had never seen anything like it. "Why did he do that?" she asked Sergeant Morek after the battle. "I do not know," Morek said. He looked troubled. His face showed emotions that Kieraven had never seen from him before. The translator says humans call it sacrifice, giving your life for others. But that makes no sense. He could have lived. He could have served the Empire. He could have been useful. Yes, he chose death instead. Morek stared at the body of the dead human soldier. "I think we do not understand these creatures at all." The first week of occupation was chaos. Corvani forces controlled the major cities, but humans refused to accept it. There were no formal surrenders. Government leaders went into hiding and kept broadcasting messages of resistance on frequencies the Corvani could not completely jam. Ordinary humans sabotaged equipment, hid supplies, and helped enemy soldiers escape through tunnels and secret routes. They formed networks of resistance without being ordered to. They organized themselves without commanders telling them what to do. They looked out for each other without expecting rewards. Kieraven was assigned to guard a group of human prisoners in a building they had converted into a holding facility. There were 200 humans inside, waiting to be processed and sent to work camps. They ranged in age from very young to very old. Some wore fancy clothes. Others wore simple work outfits. They came from all parts of human society. The translators were working now. She could understand what the humans said to each other. She wished she could not. "They took my daughter," a woman said to another prisoner. "She is only 6 years old. Where did they take her? Why would they separate us?" "My wife was injured in the attack," a man said. "She needs medicine. Her leg is getting worse. Please, someone help her." "I am hungry," a child said to his mother. "When can we eat?" "Soon, baby," the mother said. "Soon, be brave for me." Kieraven had been told that conquered species were resources. They were not people. They were tools to be used for the glory of the Empire. That was what all her training said. That was what all her commanders believed. But these humans did not seem like tools. They seemed like the families she remembered from her own homeworld before she was taken for military service. They cared about each other the same way her mother had cared for her, before the Empire came and took everything away. She reported to her commanding officer, a captain named Drekmar. "The prisoners need food and medicine. Many of them are getting sick." "They will receive standard rations," the officer said without looking up from his reports. "That is enough." The standard rations are not meant for their biology. They cannot digest some of the components. They are getting sick. Some of the children have fevers. Then they will be replaced with healthier workers. That is how conquest works, soldier. Do not question it again. Kieraven did not question it again out loud, but she did not stop thinking about it either. She lay awake that night and listened to the sounds of humans crying in their cells. Children asking for their parents. Parents asking about their children. Old people coughing from illnesses they could not treat. She thought about her own mother, crying when the military took her away. She had not thought about that in years. The training was supposed to erase those memories, but they were still there, buried deep. 2 weeks into the occupation, something changed in the way humans treated their captors. Instead of fear or hatred, some of them started showing something else. Something Kieraven did not recognize at first. Kindness. Kiraven was guarding a food distribution point when an old human woman approached her. The woman walked slowly, using a stick to help her move. She had white hair and a face covered in lines from a long life. Her eyes were gentle. The woman held out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "For you," the woman said through the translator. "You look tired and sad." Inside the cloth was a piece of human food, a pastry of some kind, still warm, golden brown and smelling of something sweet. The woman had given away part of her own ration, her own limited food, shared with an enemy. "Why?" Kiraven asked. "I am your enemy. I conquered your world. I guard your prison." "You are a young girl far from home," the woman said. "I had a granddaughter your age. The bombs took her in the first attack." The woman's eyes were wet with tears, but she was not angry. She was sad. "You did not drop those bombs. You are just a soldier. Someone else sent you here. Someone else made these decisions." Kiraven stared at the food in her hands. No one had ever given her a gift before. In the Corvani military, kindness was weakness. Resources were distributed based on rank and usefulness, not compassion. Gifts were bribes or tricks. Nothing was free. "Thank you," she said. The words felt strange in her mouth. The old woman smiled. "Eat it while it is warm, and be careful out there. Some of my people are very angry. They do not see the difference between orders and choices, but I think you do. I think you understand more than you let yourself admit." That night, Kiraven lay in her bunk and thought about what the woman had said. Orders and choices. She had been following orders her entire life. She had never thought about whether those orders were right or wrong. She had never been allowed to think about it. On her homeworld, before the military took her, her mother had made pastries like the one the human woman gave her. She remembered the smell, the warmth, the feeling of being loved by someone who expected nothing in return. The Empire had taken all of that away. They had turned her into a weapon, and now that weapon was pointed at people who still remembered how to love each other. For the first time since her training began, Kiraven wondered if she was fighting for the right side. The third week brought new problems for the Corvani occupation. Human resistance groups were growing bolder. Supplies were being stolen from warehouses that should have been secure. Communication lines were being cut by saboteurs who disappeared before they could be caught. Corvani soldiers were disappearing in the night, taken by resistance fighters who seemed to know every secret passage in every building. But the strangest development was not the violence, it was the conversations. Humans had figured out how to communicate with Corvani soldiers despite the language barrier. They used pictures, gestures, and the few words they had learned from captured translators. They drew images in the dirt. They made faces that somehow communicated meaning across the gap between species. And they asked questions, so many questions. Where are you from? Do you have families? What is your home like? Why are you fighting? What do you want from life? What makes you happy? Kiraven found herself answering these questions when her commanders were not watching. She told the humans about Corvan, her homeworld. She told them about the green forests that once covered the continents, now replaced by factories and military bases. She told them about the empire that had conquered it 300 years ago. She told them about the system that took children from their families and trained them to be soldiers. "So you are slaves," a human man said when she finished explaining. He was a teacher, he had told her. He taught young humans about history. "The empire conquered your planet and turned your people into soldiers." "We are citizens of the empire," Kiraven corrected him. "We serve the greater good. That is what we are told." "But you have no choice. You cannot leave. You cannot go home. You cannot live the life you want to live. You cannot decide what work you do or who you marry or whether you have children." The man shook his head slowly. "That sounds like slavery to me. Slavery with extra steps maybe, but still slavery." Kiraven wanted to argue. She wanted to explain that service to the empire was an honor, not a burden. That she was part of something greater than herself. that her sacrifice had meaning. But the words would not come, because somewhere deep inside, in a place the training had not reached, she knew the human was right. She had been a slave her whole life. She had just never been allowed to call it that. By the end of the first month, Kieraven had learned more about humanity than the Empire's intelligence reports ever told her. She learned that humans valued something called freedom more than life itself. They would die before they would submit. They would fight impossible battles because the alternative was giving up who they were. She learned that they organized themselves into families by choice, not just by birth. They adopted children who were not their own blood. They married partners they loved instead of partners assigned by the state. They built communities based on shared beliefs and interests, not just geographical proximity. She learned that they made art and music not because it served any purpose, but simply because it made them happy. They painted pictures that had no military value. They wrote songs about love and loss and hope. They told stories that had been passed down for thousands of years, stories about heroes who fought for what was right instead of what was ordered. She also learned that humans were very good at identifying unhappy people and offering them friendship. A young human woman named Marie worked in the prison kitchen. She had been captured in the first week of the invasion. She was supposed to be a resource, a tool, a thing, but she refused to act like one. Marie and Kieraven spoke whenever the guards were not watching. Marie taught Kieraven human words. Kieraven taught Marie Corvani words. They laughed at each other's mistakes. They shared stories about their homes. "You are not like the other soldiers," Marie said one day. They were sitting in a corner of the kitchen, speaking in whispers. "The others do not speak to us. They do not see us as people. They look right through us like we are furniture." "I was told you were resources," Kieraven admitted. "Tools for the Empire to use. That is what all the training says. That is what we are supposed to believe." "And what do you believe now?" "I believe you are people just like us. You love your families, you miss your homes, you dream of better lives." Kieraven paused. "I believe the Empire lied to me." "Then why do you serve an empire that treats people like tools?" Kieraven had no answer. That question haunted her dreams for days afterward. The turning point came 5 weeks into the occupation. Kieraven received orders to execute 10 human prisoners as punishment for a resistance attack that killed 2 Corvani soldiers. She looked at the list of names. Marie was on it. "These prisoners were not involved in the attack," Kieraven said to her commanding officer. "They were in custody when it happened. They could not have participated. This is documented." "That does not matter," the officer said. "The humans must learn that resistance has consequences. Choose any 10 prisoners and execute them. Make the others watch. This will teach them to fear us." "Sir, this is wrong. These people are innocent. They have committed no crime." The officer struck her across the face. The blow was hard enough to make her stumble backward. Pain exploded through her skull. "You do not decide what is wrong, soldier. The Empire decides. You obey. That is your purpose. That is all you are." Kieraven stood at attention, her cheek burning from the blow. In that moment, something inside her broke. Or maybe something came back to life. Something that the training had buried but never destroyed. Something that remembered what it felt like to be loved. "Yes, sir," she said. "I will carry out the order." But she did not carry out the order. Instead, she found Marie and told her what was about to happen. "You have to run," Kieraven said. "All of you, tonight. I will disable the door locks and create a distraction. Go to the resistance. They will protect you." Marie stared at her. "You would betray your own people for us. They will kill you if they find out." "No," Kieraven said. "I am betraying my masters to protect people. That is different." She took a deep breath. "The Empire is not my people. They conquered my people just like they conquered yours. I was too young to remember, but I understand now. We are the same, all of us. Slaves pretending to be soldiers, tools pretending to have purpose." Why are you doing this? You barely know us. Because an old woman gave me bread when I was her enemy. Because you taught me your language and laughed at my mistakes. Because for the first time in my life, people have treated me like a person instead of a weapon. Kieraven felt tears in her eyes. She had not cried since she was a child. The humans welcomed me. You did not hate me for what I had done. You understood that I was a victim too. You offered me something the Empire never gave me. What was that? Hope. That night, 200 prisoners escaped from the holding facility. Kieraven disabled the security systems and started a fire in the ammunition storage to draw attention away from the escape route. She knew that her life in the Corvani military was over. She knew that she could never go back. She did not care. She had finally made a choice that was her own. News of the escape spread through the Corvani occupation force. Commander Vex Thorn was furious. He paced the bridge of his flagship and screamed at his subordinates. Find them, find the traitor, execute everyone involved. He ordered all units to hunt down the escaped prisoners and the soldier who had helped them, but something unexpected happened. Other soldiers started asking questions. They had been talking to humans too. They had heard stories about freedom and choice. They had received small kindnesses that confused them. Sergeant Marek found Vex Thorn in his command center 3 days after the escape. "Sir, we have a problem," Marek said. His voice was careful, measured. "The soldiers are talking about what Kieraven did. Some of them think she was right. Then arrest them for sedition." "Sir, that would be half my unit, and I am hearing similar reports from other divisions. The humans are doing something to us. I do not understand it." Vex Thorn slammed his fist on the control panel. "They are weak creatures with primitive weapons. They cannot even leave their own planet. How can they possibly affect trained Corvani soldiers?" Marek hesitated before answering. He had served under Vex Thorn for 15 years. He had never questioned an order, but now he said something that surprised them both. "They are treating us like people, sir, not like enemies. Not like conquerors, like people who might be their friends, like people who might want something better than what we have." "That is ridiculous." "Yes, sir, but it is working." The human resistance found Kieraven and the escaped prisoners hiding in an abandoned factory outside the city. Instead of treating her as an enemy, they welcomed her. She was the first Corvani defector, but they seemed to know she would not be the last. A human commander named Colonel Hayes sat down with her to talk. He was an older man with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. He looked tired, but his voice was kind. "Why did you help them?" he asked. "Because the order was wrong," Kieraven said. "Killing innocent people to punish others is wrong. I always knew this somewhere inside me, but I had been trained to ignore it. The training told me that obedience was everything. The training told me that the Empire was always right." "What changed?" "Your people changed me. You showed me what it looks like when people care about each other, when they sacrifice for each other, when they fight for more than just survival." Kieraven looked at the colonel with something like wonder in her eyes. "In the Empire, we are told that strength comes from obedience, that power comes from control, but your people are strong because you love each other. That is different. That is better. That is something the Empire cannot match." Colonel Hayes smiled. "Would you be willing to help us show other Corvani soldiers the same thing?" "Yes," Kieraven said without hesitation, "but not through violence, through truth. Most of them do not know they have a choice. Someone has to show them. Someone has to tell them that there is another way to live." And so the strangest military operation in human history began. Instead of trying to kill Corvani soldiers, the resistance started trying to recruit them. Week 6 of the occupation was when everything began to fall apart for the Corvani Empire. Kieraven recorded messages in her own language and broadcast them on Corvani communication frequencies. She told her story. She told the truth about the Empire. She told her fellow soldiers that they did not have to be weapons. They could be people instead. The humans have something we lost long ago, she said in one broadcast. Her voice went out to thousands of soldiers across the planet. They have the right to choose their own lives. They have families who love them. They have communities that take care of each other. The Empire took all of this from us and told us it was for our own good. They lied. I know many of you are afraid. I know the punishment for defection is death. I know you have been trained since childhood to believe that the Empire is everything and you are nothing. But I ask you to consider something. What kind of life are you living now? Following orders you do not believe in, hurting people who have done nothing wrong. Is that really living? The humans welcomed me. They did not hate me for what I had done. They understood that I was a victim too, just like them. They offered me something the Empire never gave me. They offered me hope. They offered me friendship. They offered me a chance to be more than a weapon. If you want to find hope too, put down your weapons. Walk toward the human lines with your hands raised. Tell them HFY sent you. They will take care of you, I promise. They will not hurt you. They will not enslave you. They will help you become the person you were meant to be. The first defector after HFY was a young male soldier named Braxall. He walked out of his guard post during the night shift and surrendered to a human patrol. He said he had heard HFY's broadcast and wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe there was another way. The humans took him to a camp where former prisoners were organizing. Marie was there. She gave Braxall food and showed him where to sleep. She treated him like a person. Braxall cried for 3 hours. He had not known he was capable of crying. The Empire trained that out of soldiers early in their development. Tears were weakness. Emotion was failure. But something about being treated with kindness broke through all that training. Something about being seen as a person instead of a tool opened a door that had been locked for years. "Thank you," he said to Marie when he could speak again. "I do not deserve this. I have done terrible things." "Everyone deserves kindness," Marie said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Even people who make mistakes, even people who hurt others, everyone can change. Everyone can be better. That is what it means to be a person." The second defector came 2 days later, then 3 more, then 12. By the end of week 6, over 200 Corvani soldiers had abandoned their posts and joined the human resistance. Some of them had never questioned the Empire before. Others had been waiting their whole lives for permission to stop fighting. All of them had heard HFY's broadcasts. All of them had decided to take a chance on hope. Commander Vex Thorn watched the reports with growing horror. His invasion force was dissolving, not from battle losses, not from superior enemy tactics, from choice. His soldiers were choosing to leave. "How is this possible?" he demanded at a command meeting. "These are trained soldiers. They have been conditioned since childhood. They have been through psychological programming that is supposed to make defection impossible. How can they simply walk away?" No one had an answer. The Corvani Empire had conquered 47 worlds. They had never lost soldiers to kindness before. They had never faced an enemy that fought with friendship instead of weapons. The humans had a word for what was happening. They called it love. HFY learned this word from Marie during a quiet moment in the resistance camp. The former prisoner and the former guard had become friends. Real friends, not the kind of strategic alliances that existed in the Empire. Friends who cared about each other because they chose to, not because it benefited them. "Why do you help us?" HFY asked. "We invaded your world, we killed your people, we put you in prison, we took everything from you. Why would you show us kindness?" "Because hate makes you weak," Marie said. "It eats you from the inside. My grandmother taught me this. She survived a terrible war when she was young, a war between humans. She saw what hate did to people. She saw how it destroyed everyone, winners and losers alike. She decided that love was the only way to make things better. But we are your enemies. You were our enemies. Now you are our friends. People can change. That is the beautiful thing about being alive. You are not trapped by what you were. You can become something new." Marie took Kiraven's hand. "Love is stronger than hate. It is stronger than fear. It is stronger than any empire that ever existed. The Corvani taught you that strength comes from power and control, but real strength comes from caring about others more than yourself." Kiraven thought about the human soldier who threw himself on a grenade to save his companions. She thought about the old woman who gave her food even though she was a prisoner. She thought about Marie, who befriended her enemy because she believed everyone deserved kindness. "I think I am beginning to understand," Kiraven said. Week 7 brought a crisis for Commander Vex Thorn. A full battalion of soldiers stationed in what the humans called Germany sent a collective message to their command. They were refusing further orders. They wanted to negotiate. "This is mutiny," Vex Thorn said. His voice shook with anger. "Execute the leaders and redistribute the rest to other units." "Sir," his aide said carefully, "the unit commanders are part of the mutiny. There is no one left to carry out executions. The entire chain of command has broken down." "Then send loyal troops to deal with them." "Sir, we are not sure which troops are still loyal. The defection rate is climbing every day, and the humans are making it worse. They are broadcasting footage of defectors being treated well. They are showing our soldiers that there is another way to live." Vex Thorn stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed Corvani positions across Earth, but many of those positions were no longer responding to commands. His invasion force was falling apart, not from military defeat, from something far worse. "How did this happen?" he whispered. "We had superior technology, superior training, superior numbers. How are we losing to primitives who cannot even leave their own planet?" His aide did not answer, but Vex Thorn saw the look in his eyes, the same look that defectors had before they walked away, the look of someone questioning everything they had been taught. The aide was wondering if there was another way to live too. The 8th week of the occupation was its last. Kiraven stood before a gathering of 3,000 Corvani defectors and spoke to them about what came next. They had gathered in a field outside a human city. Humans and Corvani stood together, united by a shared belief in something greater than empires. "The Empire will not forgive us," she said. "They will send more ships. They will send more soldiers. They will try to crush this rebellion and make an example of everyone who defied them. They cannot allow us to succeed, because our success would prove that their power is built on lies. But here is what I know now. The humans have shown us something the Empire cannot destroy. They have shown us that we are capable of love, that we are capable of choice, that we are capable of being more than weapons. I do not know if we can win against the Empire. I do not know if Earth will survive what comes next. The Empire is vast and powerful. They have resources we cannot match. But I know this. I would rather die free than live as a slave. I would rather fight for love than kill for power. Who stands with me?" 3,000 voices answered. Former soldiers of the Corvani Empire, now defenders of Earth. They had switched sides not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Because humans had shown them that choice was possible. Colonel Hayes stood beside Kiraven as the crowd cheered. He shook his head in amazement. "When this started, I thought we had no chance," he said. 500 warships, thousands of trained soldiers, technology we could not match. I expected to die fighting for my world. I expected my children to grow up under alien rule." "What changed?" Kiraven asked. "You did, all of you. I thought this would be a war of weapons. Instead, it became a war of ideas. And it turns out kindness is a more powerful weapon than plasma rifles. It turns out love can do what all our bombs and bullets could not." Commander Vex Thorn received orders from the Empire High Command. Withdraw from Earth. Preserve remaining forces. Return for reinforcements and plan a new conquest strategy. He looked at the numbers on his screen. Of the 20,000 soldiers he had brought to Earth, nearly 8,000 had defected. Another 3,000 had refused orders without formally joining the resistance. His effective fighting force was less than half of what it had been 2 months ago. And the defections were still happening. Every day, more soldiers walked away. Every day, the broadcasts from Kiev and others reached more ears. "How do I explain this?" he asked the empty bridge. "How do I tell the Empire that we lost a war without losing a single major battle? How do I explain that our soldiers simply chose to stop fighting?" There was no answer, but Vex Thorn knew what he would say in his report. He would say that the humans possessed a weapon the Empire had never encountered before, a weapon that could not be blocked by armor or shot down by fighters. They had found a way to make enemies into friends, and that was something no empire could defeat. The Corvani ships withdrew from Earth orbit on the 59th day of the occupation. They left behind thousands of their own soldiers who had chosen to stay, who had chosen humanity over empire, who had chosen love over duty. Kiev watched the ships depart from a hilltop outside Paris. Marie stood beside her, along with Braxall and hundreds of other defectors. Human soldiers and civilians stood among them. 2 months ago they had been enemies. Now they were family. "What happens now?" Braxall asked. "Now we prepare," Kiev said. "The Empire will come back. They do not accept defeat. They will bring more ships and more soldiers. They will try again." "Can we win?" Kiev looked at the mixed crowd of humans and Corvani. She saw the bonds that had formed between former enemies. She saw hope in eyes that had once held only fear or obedience. She saw something that the Empire had tried to destroy but could not. "I do not know if we can win," she said honestly, "but I know we will fight together, not because we are ordered to, because we choose to, because we love each other. And that makes all the difference." 3 months after the invasion began, Earth broadcast a message to the galaxy. It was spoken by Colonel Hayes and translated into every known language by Corvani defectors. To all the species conquered by the Corvani Empire, to all the soldiers forced to fight wars they did not choose, to everyone who has forgotten that they have the right to live free. Earth still stands, not because we have the strongest weapons, not because we have the most advanced technology. We stand because we discovered something more powerful than any empire. We discovered that kindness can defeat cruelty, that friendship can overcome hate, that when you treat enemies like people, they often become allies. If you want to be free, come to Earth. We will welcome you. We will teach you what we know. We will stand beside you against anyone who tries to enslave you again. The Empire taught you that strength comes from control. We are here to teach you that strength comes from love. You are not alone. You never have to be alone again. The message spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On 47 conquered worlds, enslaved people heard it and began to hope. On 100 Corvani ships, soldiers heard it and began to question. In the palaces of the Empire's rulers, officials heard it and began to worry. The Empire had invaded Earth expecting an easy conquest. They left having lost something far more important than a single planet. They had lost the lie that held their empire together, the lie that said strength came from power and obedience, the lie that said people were tools to be used and discarded, the lie that said love was weakness. Earth had shown the galaxy a different truth, that the strongest force in the universe was not a weapon. It was a hand extended in friendship. It was a piece of bread shared with a hungry stranger. It was a grandmother teaching her granddaughter that love was more powerful than hate. The humans called it humanity, and it was something the Empire had never learned how to fight. 5 years after the invasion, Kiev stood on the same hilltop where she had watched the Corvani ships depart, but the landscape below her had changed. Where once there had been ruins and checkpoints, now there were homes and gardens. Human and Corvani children played together in streets that had once been battlefields. Marie stood beside her holding a baby in her arms, a human Corvani hybrid, the first of many, two species learning to become one people. Did you ever think this would happen? Marie asked. No, Kiravan admitted. I thought I would die a soldier. I thought that was all I was meant to be. The Empire taught me that I was nothing but a weapon, that my only value was in my ability to kill. And now I am a mother, a wife, a citizen of a free world. I am everything the Empire told me I could never be. In the distance, the sky flashed with light, more ships arriving, not invaders this time, refugees from the Empire seeking the freedom that Earth had promised. Every month more came. Every month Earth grew stronger. The Corvani Empire was crumbling, not from military defeats, but from a revolution of the heart. Soldiers were refusing orders across dozens of worlds. Slaves were demanding freedom in factories and mines. The lie that had held the empire together for 3,000 years was finally breaking apart. And it had all started with a piece of bread, shared by an old woman with a young soldier far from home. Thank you, Kiravan said to Marie, for showing me another way. Thank you for choosing it, Marie replied. That was always your choice to make. I just reminded you that you had one. They stood together and watched the ships descend, each one carrying more souls who had chosen freedom over slavery, more people who had learned the lesson that Earth taught the galaxy. That love was the strongest weapon of all. And that humanity, in all its messy and beautiful complexity, was not just the name of a species. It was the name of what beings became when they chose to care about each other more than themselves. The Empire had invaded Earth expecting to add another conquered world to their list. Instead, they had started a revolution that would change the galaxy forever. All because their soldiers discovered something worth fighting for. Something worth dying for. Something worth living for. Each other.